There's a couple.
I need that. So. Knowledge that there's been a lot of work put into this, so we're looking forward to hearing about it. But we just got the news, so I didn't know if anybody on the broadband committee wanted to say anything to that effect about where we're at and how you would like to proceed, if you'd like to hold another joint meeting just for this purpose.
I mean, I would suggest that that would be ideal, you know, that would set the stage between that and what we circulated, that would set the stage for a robust conversation about next steps. So, I mean, that would be ideal. I know that's asking people to get their time. But
Okay, so we'll look at that and try to find some dates.
Yeah.
Great with that? Okay. All right. The next item is the local waterfront revitalization program, Grass River Recreation Assessment, New York State Consolidated Funding Application discussion. This application was submitted last year. It's 127 pages. It's an $81,000 application to try to get a study done on the river corridor. We weren't awarded. Lee is here. There's a 15% match, I believe, to that. So the question is, do we want to reapply? And if it's okay with each board, maybe Lee could speak to a little bit about it, about, you know, where we fell short with the application and, you know, perhaps upgrade it or whatever. And then the boards will discuss whether we want to reapply. Is everybody good with that? So Lee? Can you speak to it a little bit?
Yeah, like you said, it was basically to hire a consultant and consulting firm to do an assessment of all the town and village assets and create a strategic plan about how we might enhance them. Things like looking at some of the building structures, like the recreational pavilion, the bathhouse at Timber Park, the wastewater treatment, the water treatment plant that's hopefully soon to be decommissioned down in the studies of those buildings to really dive in and see what's needed there for investment, potential reuse of the old water plant, upgrades that are needed to the pavilion, how it can be used more year round, and upgrades to the park and the bathhouse there, and again, just the whole assessment of what we have, its current condition, and how we might move forward. Also included in that, Bennett River Park is a big focus of the study because another grant that we have right now is looking at Stiles Avenue as a potential site for shared services for the highway department and DPW. So if the sand and salt storage, the village is moved out of that area, that could potentially be a recreation area, things like that. So looking at everything. So that was a planning request. The only other thing I'll say about it is that as far as where we fell short, we didn't fall very short. The biggest thing they tell us is that we didn't get points for it being an implementation grant. It was a planning request. And last year, particularly, they were awarding additional points for implementation of projects, which this one did not include. There were a couple of areas I'm not recalling right now that they thought we maybe could have enhanced slightly, maybe 1 or 2 points, but they didn't really have anything bad to say about our application. So the only other thing we had talked about is that our local waterfront, the Grass River Revitalization Plan we have is not technically a local waterfront revitalization plan. There's an additional step that we didn't take when we did that to make it a recognized or designated waterway. It's recognized by the state. By doing that and taking that step, you can also get a few additional points. So it was their recommendation that we could include that and the money to hire consultants beyond that. And we would get those points just by requesting and showing that that was in progress. We would get the points in that application and we can also ask for them to do that. So, that's just the application.
And what would be the deadline if we resubmitted?
They haven't announced the consolidated funding round yet. Typically, it's the end of July. I would expect, usually they announce it after the budget's passed mid-May, so it should be being announced fairly soon. And as I said, they're usually the end of July. And then you find out typically in December. Contract would be next.
Is there any sense that implementation will be promoted again this round, or why do we think it might be different between planning and implementation this time?
I don't know that answer to that. I think they usually, when the consolidated funding application resource guide or the book that has all funds in it,
Mhm.
they usually have scoring rubric in there.
This is not out
So
yet.
it would indicate in there, I would imagine. Yeah. So that's coming.
We did receive some emails, I believe that pertains to this. I did forward them to the board, the two boards. And Herb Bullock, you just handed this to me as well. So I don't know if you would like to speak to this, or if board members want to ask Lee further questions. What would you prefer? Would you like to take comments from the people that are here?
Can I just say one thing? It seems to me there's two separate
Those are
issues.
Yeah.
different.
Yeah,
There's two separate issues. There's the use of Willow Island and what's already in progress down there, and the repurposing of potentially along the Grass River. So I think we should discuss those as separate issues and not combine them, because there's overlap, but I think where we're at with them is entirely different.
I agree with that, Bob, because I think what you said is not correct. The comments we got today are not pertinent to this application. This application is for the inventory and assessment for recreation assets. Now, we do have the idea that that will include, not just Bend in the River Park and the pavilion and all that, that we'll look at all the different things. So that's what this is about. This is the inventory and assessment. That's one thing. The separate whole application, grant, everything for Willow Island is a different project. It has been funded. It is simply a planning project. There is no amphitheater in it yet. It's what we're hiring is a consultant to come in, there have been charrettes, there's been planning, there have been a lot of pictures in the newspaper of things that were people's ideas. That is nothing cast in stone. What we're hiring now with that grant is the first part of it will be funding for a consultant to come in, do assessments on the island of what floodplain and all the different things, what the feasibility is for putting any kind of a project there. Do a lot of community engagement to get input from people about what they'd like to see there, and talk about parking, talk about ingress and egress. That's all part of what we're looking at now. And I think the important thing to understand is it's not two separate things. It's not either or. It doesn't mean if we put something here, it's not going. The idea is it's the river, it's all to work together and go together ultimately. But what is down, the plan that's for down here right now is just that. It's money for a plan. It's money for.
I thought that was money for implementation on Willow Island.
There's implementation money in it once we figure out, but not for implementing anything, any sets, exactly.
So I guess a question for Lee then, I think, given the overlap of these two, I mean, here we are, we're doing this comprehensive study on recreation, but doing an implementation project in recreation at the same time. Is there time to take a step back in the Department of State's mind to really take another look at this in a different way?
No, in fact, the Department of State. So to answer the first piece of that question, the project that includes the Willow Island enhancements, there's a whole other component to that, minor street
Yeah.
lighting and trail, making trails basically to Field Park. There, when we submitted the application, we intended for there to be money to do a portion of the implementation as well. Well, finding out lots changed in the last few years, numbers on everything have gone up, so we are not going to be able to implement as much as we had hoped. We still hope that we can do at least one phase of the project with the funding that's there. There's still a significant amount of funding in the project, so hopefully, yes, we can. But what Department of State has said is that what they would encourage us to do is, by the way, the same program. It's the local waterfront revitalization program. We've gone to that funding source a number of times with great relationship with the Department of State. They know us well. They are encouraging us even this year, if we're far enough along, which at this point we may or may not be, to apply for money this round for additional implementation at Willow Island.
What is the length of time for the study? It's
For
300,
funding,
no, for the study itself, 300,000 seems like a lot of money for,
it's not a study, it's a plan.
well, I thought that's what, Carol, didn't you just say it's a study?
There will be, there's studies being done to create a
Right.
plan.
Okay,
So yes, there's gonna be a whole like, hydrology study and all this stuff. But it's all part of the site reconnaissance. Before you can create a design, you've got to know the plan.
but I get that.
So that's part of that process. To answer the other question, Bob, that you had about timing and taking a step back. I understand that from one perspective. I get that. However, this has been in the works for a number of
Sure,
many
I get it.
years. That was what we had ready at the time. Can't do everything all at
No,
once.
and that's the reason I fully understand that, but it seems like that's the questions coming from the community. This would be the time to ask the question I ask. I don't know the answer to it. You know
Well,
what I'm saying?
and
I get it.
like Carol said, it's not an either or thing, you know, maybe we should have done the study before we started implementing projects, but we've done a lot of studies.
Sure. Oh, yeah.
We've done a lot of feasibility analyses, we've done a lot of planning. They're not gonna keep funding planning unless we start implementing stuff. You know, and it all
totally agree.
goes back to that original local waterfront revitalization plan. One of the goals is to enhance waterfront parks. To draw people to enjoy the water, public access, enhance public access, enhance recreational opportunities, enhance food sheds. You know, it's all about bringing people to the water.
Mhm.
That project, the land is adjacent to the land that's owned by Grass River Heritage. Over the last decade, 15 years, they've done a lot to enhance that area.
Mhm.
And it's sort of,
hire more cops, raise their pay, and give them the support they need. And here's something.
so it's sort of a continuation of that, and it's kind of built off of what was going on there, but also it's downtown. And part of the idea and the goal of the waterfront revitalization plan is to revitalize the economy, bring people downtown, get them moving around downtown and enjoying the waterfront downtown. So again, it doesn't have to be an either or. I don't disagree with any of the thoughts or ideas that are coming about them. This just happens to be the one that
Sure.
got moved on first. And I think there are a lot of people that have a lot of really great ideas about what could be. And this is an opportunity for us to really sit down and say, okay, what could be?
Yeah.
Let's do it. Let's get the public involved. Let's see what everybody wants to happen down here. Let's agree on a plan and then let's get money to do it.
Well, yeah, and I think this conversation is important because I get everything, but I think people in the community haven't been engaged enough to understand it on that level.
And so the Island Park grant, we got the award letter in December of 2019, which means we did all that work in 2019, and it was connected to the grant for the Minor Street connector. Sure.
Yeah, they tend to like to, this funding source for some reason likes to see several component pieces in one grant application. Basically have typically 3 to 4 projects per grant that are unrelated other than they all connect somehow to the water. This one, there's only two, but this is a larger dollar figure because it is implementation, but that's really the ultimate goal, is to get them done.
And similarly, it's the town's intention to now go for funding for the actual construction of the salt stand building, which will make that land available. So, I mean, as part of this discussion with this grant, keep in mind that the town is also still interested in doing that next step that is really connected back to there anyway.
But let me just add too that this whole discussion about, we're talking about one particular potential application, but it's usually part of a larger discussion that we have around this time of year, like what are our priorities? And where are we going to put our efforts towards trying to get funding for the next things in the pipeline? So this is one that we just happened to have done last year, that we were encouraged to resubmit. So, you know, it was an opportunity, I think, to have those boards here to say, yes, we do want to proceed. And there, and in the next months, there will be probably others that we support, that support us going after as well.
Okay, well, yes, it is two different things, but we do have correspondence here that I did send to the two boards, and Herb just handed this to me. So I'd like to have that as part of the record that Frank Colombo wasn't able to be here, but he did send his thoughts and pictures regarding the Bend in the River part and the whole larger issue. Mark McKenna, who is here, also sent an email about his thoughts about the Willow Island Park renovation. And then Tim Applenath, I just got that, I just was able to see that this afternoon when I came in. So I did forward that to both boards and Lee about his concerns about an amphitheater down in the Willow Island. And so, like you said, Bob, there is some clarity that needs to be done. So, Herb, would you like to speak to yours, and then we'll get to you?
Well, the biggest part that I'm hearing is the public input part, the public comment part, that's around town. And I agree with everything that Lee said about the river, about all the projects that might be feasible in the plan. And that's a great idea. There's many activities down there that could be held. The biggest question, I think, is the Willow Island. Safety kind of issues that might be involved in the traffic. Probably many of you have been over to Norwood to the park and concerts, and they're great, and I'm all in favor of heritage and news. And we're just looking at the public input aspect of maybe a meeting of where that is showing. Issue of restrooms.
And you have a list here. So,
But if that can be discussed at some point with the public. then
So that's exactly the plan. What you're asking for is exactly what these consultants were coming to do. They're gonna do assessments down there and look, do the tests and the studying that we talked about, but then they will hold public sessions where I think there will be two things, that they'll hold public information sessions where people can come, but I think they'll also meet with groups, groups that have interests in that, the tree committee, to gather input and gather information. So it really is very much still at the feasibility assessment stage.
Well, I heard the word implementation.
Yeah.
Here.
I mean, I too, I have some concerns about Willow Island and drawing a bunch of people onto Willow Island, but I think if we think about Willow Island, like the gazebo or the gazebo they have at Ives Park in Potsdam compared to what they have in Norwood. And I think what Frank Colombo is looking for, and I agree with him, for Bend in the River is more of a Norwood-like situation. And I think Willow Island is more akin to Ives Park, where it's a gazebo and it's a much more different sort of use and gonna draw a lot less people than Norwood would say. I mean, is that, would you agree with that or not?
I think I think that may be what they arrive at. I don't think any of those decisions are
Okay.
made yet.
Okay.
But I think that, that's where we need to get.
But then I think
Not made.
that's a good point of clarification, because I think a lot of people, myself included, are operating under that. The Willow Island grant was implementation that people knew what they wanted, and that's what we're going after. Art, bathrooms, and a band shell. That's not the case?
No, it's not the case, but I know
Okay.
why that seems that way, because it is a partly an implementation grant. Plus also the sketches, and we've had this conversation with a lot of people, the sketches that were, possibilities that you needed something to have, to send out, to say, we're looking at ideas like this, can you get us an RFP? Then the newspaper printed them like, 5 times, and that is not a plan.
Okay.
It's a plan.
It's an application.
It's not a plan. It's what?
A concept.
A concept. But no, it's not. And, an amphitheater or a band shell, none of that is
Gotcha.
decided.
How have we communicated with the public in this whole process?
There have been sessions where people were invited to give input.
But it seems like there's a lot of confusion in the process, though.
People come into conversations at various
Right,
stages. You're a perfect example.
Yeah.
We've been having these conversations for all these years. Some people come in later, some people get, confused information.
Right.
So I think it's clear, we got work to do in that area.
And I also think that it's been interrupted by.
Yeah.
by the pandemic.
Well,
And there's a gap in information and remembering.
I mean, a lot of this work was done in 2019.
Right.
Pre-application,
Yeah.
so.
Really, they began having design charrettes around this probably in 14 or 15. It's been a long time. And a lot of public input. Now there's other public interested in input, and they'll have their chance.
So Lee, can you please? Go ahead.
I beg to differ with you, I'm sorry. I try to stay abreast of what's going on in this community, and the truth is, there has been minuscule public input into the Willow Island plan. There has never been a public hearing, there has never been any kind of public discourse, and the non-plan, the conceptual master plan has never been put out in the open for public review and comment, input, give and take or whatsoever. I have read the RFP for the implementation of the conceptual plan. I would have to say that public input is a minuscule part of that RFP. You go through it and you read the consultant is going to do this and this and this and this and this. And finally, at the end, it speaks to, oh yes, there's going to be a public informational meeting. And what makes this two things make this really critically important. One is the location of Willow Island relative to the downtown and so on, and the Grass River and all that. But the bigger issue, this is public land. This is a village park. I'm a taxpayer in the village of Canton. And you don't just turn over public land to a private development corporation, which is what Grass River Heritage is. I'm a contributor to Grass River Heritage. I got citizen something of the year a few years ago. I did all the landscaping in Heritage Park. All that landscape you see is my work to a large extent. I did the design work, I orchestrated it. I have been associated with Grass River Heritage since almost the moment that Peter Vanderwater came up with the idea. I have been involved with that organization. I love that organization. You cannot find in any community a group that has had such an impact in such a short period of time as Grass River Heritage has. But that doesn't mean they get licensed to take over public property.
Well, I
Has
don't
the
know
village
that
ever planned that?
that was never the plan, that they would take over public property.
Well,
It's a
they're the
partnership.
ones that are orchestrating this. They paid an architect to prepare a master plan for the park. You people, or some people here, don't want to call it a master plan. It happens to be said, it says on it, master plan, but, so we'll call it the conceptual master plan, whatever you want to call it. Has this village ever passed a resolution like turning the planning of the park over to Grass River Heritage? Has there ever been a public hearing on whether that should happen? I'm in favor of this idea of enhancing Willow Island. As many of you know, I'm the chair of the village tree committee. We do a lot of work in that park. Okay, and I'm very favorable to the idea of an arts park expansion and all that. But the process here and the way this is going on, I think, leaves a lot to be, there's a lot, we'd be doing a much better job. I won't even say a better job, open the door and have a public discussion on this before you move to implementation. Not give a grant to somebody to come in and do all this engineering work and then say, what do you think about this? As far as these projects move on forward, it's very difficult to revise them and have public input. So, I would strongly recommend that you review this arrangement with Grass River Heritage. And if you like it, I think it's fine, but let's legitimize it, make it official. And before we move forward with implementing the plan, let's make sure the community concurs with it. I think for me personally, not just as a citizen of the community, I see serious problems with the conceptual plan.
Thank you, Richard. For the record, Richard Grover from Canton. So where are we at with that grant? Did you send out, I believe you sent out for RFPs? I'm sorry, Leah King.
There's a consulting company to present to this. So if I can clarify here, the next step is to get somebody to do the site plan review and just do a study of the feasibility of putting different things on the act, correct?
It's part of the process of creating a plan.
Right, that's the first step.
There's has to be site reconnaissance done.
Of course, right. So that is what I believe is being interpreted as engineering, right? So I just, yeah. No, but-
Good, when you're done.
So from that, then there will be concepts that are not necessarily what have been published in a paper. And then with those concepts, that will be presented to the public? Yes. So in fact, we are doing exactly what you're asking for.
And there will be public input leading up to develop the concept.
Okay. I just want to make it really clear that I think we're all on the same page, but we need to, in terms of the process, we need to make a clear term of understand the process. What has happened up until now versus what is going to happen in the coming months, right? Are we good? I just wanted to make sure.
Sure.
that
How many
I understood.
RFPs did you receive? Is there a possibility in this study that the information that comes back that says bad idea, water problems, bad idea, too many people, traffic wise, given the location? I mean, is that how open this study is to actually getting news that you're not going to want to hear about Willow Island?
I think so.
Oh, yeah.
And I guess one other thing I'd like to clarify, there is a committee that's working on this. It's gonna be, part of working with the consulting group. And it has a member of Grass River Heritage on it. There's other, there's other people from the community, people from the school, people from, but, yeah. So
Who appointed this committee?
it's volunteers, really. I mean, was it appointed?
I'm not on, I don't know. I mean, to Richard's point, I agree. I think Grass River Heritage has planted their flag on the islands down there, and they've assumed, and they've been, I guess, the door's been open, that they're gonna have that sort of influence, direct influence that a lot of other people in the community don't have. I think it's a point that should be well taken.
Lee?
I think it's also a point that they've done something.
Oh, no doubt. I support them. I give them money. I work with them all the time, but I'm not, that doesn't necessarily mean that.
Sure, but I think that it's important for us to recognize that they're not necessarily gonna drive the conceptual plan that's gonna come from this process that has yet to happen, right?
Yes, what I was gonna say, and I think influence is the wrong word. I think they have an interest in seeing further development there and approach the village and town and said, would you be interested in us taking the lead on starting to put some ideas together? As I recall it, the village and town agreed. Yes, I don't know if there was a resolution or anything to that effect, but there was, that discussion was had. So they had taken the lead on thinking about how that island could be enhanced. A lot of people involved, not just Grass River. They came from broad places. So they may be just like any other interested parties in the community, approached municipalities with an idea, asked for their partnership, and it has proceeded over a number of years. I mean, we are talking about certainly 2017, 2018. So things don't happen overnight, but this is where we're at now. They are a part of the conversation. They are not the decision maker.
And I appreciate all that. Part of my playing devil's advocate is so we can have this conversation so the community can hear exactly that. Because the devil's in the details and all this stuff, and a lot of times the community doesn't get the details. So I'm not asking because I don't know. I'm asking because I want the information out there so people can hear it.
Mark McKenna, did you want to say something?
Well, I was wondering for the benefit of people in the audience that didn't see my email, can I read my email out?
The board?
Because usually when you have a concept plan, the concept plan is developed first, then the concept plan is developed a master plan. What was in the paper, was reported, was a master plan. Well, my concern is here's my email to the board. Solid plan for Little Island Park renovation project. We heard this is being funded by the local waterfront revitalization program, Grass River Recreation Assessment, New York State Consolidated Funding. Okay. I, as well, many residents have many concerns about this proposed plan. First concern is ingress and egress of vehicle traffic from the site from Route 11 Main Street. It's a very busy thoroughfare for tractor trailers, cars, and buses. And anyone doing traffic study, especially during peak hours. The second is pedestrian traffic crossing the Main Street from one island to the other. It's a very busy street, and to put up a van shell, pavilion, seating, and parking, and a composting bathroom. This island floods every spring of the year. Also, the village highway department pumps snow on Little Island from the removal of snow banks in the winter time. Furthermore, since you plan to have bands and music in this park, did anyone perform a noise study to see how loud the current traffic is, especially when traffic trailers are using a jake brake on Main Street? You can hear it all the way from the Soon Camp to St. Louis University. Was there an environmental assessment done? A better use of the funds is to renovate Benedict River Park on Lincoln Street. You already have an existing parking lot. You already have outdoor bathrooms. You also have a natural amphitheater with the current contour of the land. You can build your van shelter pavilion and seating in that area. Also, there's no traffic, noise, and the grass river flows through the park. This is a better alternative for listening to music along the river. Also, with the extra funds the town and village can transfer the current bathrooms of the pavilion and the bathrooms at Field Park into ADA compliant bathrooms for all people to use, able and disabled alike. Thank you.
This is a bit, question for the. What would be the possibility of doing a feasibility study that would involve this, comparison? Can we do that?
Well, with this grant that's on the agenda, that would be included to look at the bigger picture.
So we
of
could
everything,
basically
so-
Ask whoever is giving this contract to take a look at and see what they think of it.
In the current application that we're discussing,
There's two applications, two things,
They're
Yeah,
different.
two different things.
right,
Contract.
but he's talking about the Bend in the River.
He's talking about the current.
He's
contract.
With Willow Island.
Right.
Yeah.
But with
There's
this,
confusion. You're talking about an application that has yet to be submitted.
right,
He's talking about the one we already have. He would like to use the funds that we've already been awarded to shift those from.
I think what, if I can clarify, I think that what he's saying is, and correct me if I'm wrong, is can we, in the awarded money already, do a feasibility between two locations in using those funds?
That's what I understood.
Yeah, and I don't know if that could even happen.
That wasn't what our proposal was. I don't know. Again, it's not an either or.
Sure, and,
So-
It's not an either or, and it can be a vote.
right,
Right, exactly.
and to Mary Ann's point, with what the grant that we have yet to agree to pursue, we could potentially, have a study out there as to what we can do. I mean, that would be part of it, is what we can do to enhance out there too. But it definitely a different process.
it is intertwined.
They're different. They're all related again, because they're all part of the waterfront. But we're talking about an awarded grant contract and an application yet to be submitted that have two different.
So the question would be to amend the agreement that you've already been awarded. Just include this secondary part, to take a look at, go down, take a walk around, and see what they think. So, the possibility, so.
But what we don't know is if that's a possibility with the way the grant was really awarded. Correct.
They don't have to make a determination, if they do a balance. That's on this side and that's on this side.
If the
They probably
boards
could do
want
that.
me
But
to
if
find
I could
out,
just,
I will ask if the boards and leaders
but it seems to me, I'm
or the
still,
public.
we've got this, they're gonna look down here at this, but we don't even know, like, I'm not sure how we could say to them, tell us if down here's better for it than here, because we don't know better for what, but we haven't come up with what we're talking about.
That's what we'd like to find out. Mark have a lot of questions.
Right.
about Different aspects.
And I think I thought we had made clear, I thought Lee had made really clear, that's a lot of the questions that Mark raised are exactly what they're gonna come in and try to give us answers to, help us see, help us understand. To me, I think we're doing what you're asking. But we don't have the second application. yet.
What, can you remind me what the overall budget is for Willow Island? I've heard two different numbers, 80-some thousand and 200.
No, the
Park implementation part,
No.
The 80,000 is what's on the agenda.
80,000 is the match. So that's 25%. I don't have the numbers in front.
For the Willow Island, I could go up and get the five.
That would, I think, in my opinion, would satisfy a lot of people's reactions if they had a comparison study. And do that.
I think that the comparison piece is part of what we're talking about applying for now. That would provide a study of the Bend in the River and the possibilities for up there. Right?
Yes.
So.
And this other piece, is going to be taken care of under a currently awarded grant. So you're going to end up with the comparison if we choose to apply for this, because this is a part of that process.
So I would say we're going to not do any implementation on Willow Island until, if we are successful on the study on Bend in the River, we're not going to do any implementation until that other study is complete. Is that what we're saying?
Well,
know if that's what we're saying.
Well, that's right.
I don't know. I don't even know.
I
We
don't
don't
think that's
even,
what we're saying.
oh, wait a minute. I don't even know if monies can be transferred from that grant
Right.
and rewritten into another piece of
That
the river.
usually can't.
Usually it can't happen. You know, it seems like it's an easy thing to do, but
That's
normally
what I'm not asking for. So, yeah, I mean,
normally you can't.
the revitalization,
Well, I understand that, but
but if we could ask for an amendment, just to take a look, in one day they could go down and walk around.
well,
Well, this is,
Can
my experience with the grants, applying for them is the easy part. Doing amendments and going through the whole process, and it takes a long time. And I don't know that I'd be comfortable asking that that be amended for that piece, considering we're looking at this one that is going to do exactly what you're talking
And
about.
now back to Richard's question. Once this thing gets started and going,
It's already, well, I didn't hear those.
goes too far in one direction, the implementation starts. It's not likely to change.
You have a conceptual plan now. The grant contract is going to be awarded for somebody to carry out that plan and detail it out.
Create a plan.
But it's to create
They're
a
not
plan.
carrying out these plans.
And
They
every
are
time I
creating-
ask for public input, oh, wait, you'll get your chance. Wait, you'll get your chance. Okay, keep getting put off.
but leading,
No.
leading up to this application that was done in 2019, 18, there was that kind of discussion. We sat here, all I can say is that we, throughout the course of our meetings, did that and had conversations about it. And then the application went in. It was part and parcel to what was done on the trails and moving out on Minor Street Road towards Taylor Park. And that all became part of it. You know, we are in the process of bringing somebody in to evaluate what is possible down here. No final decisions have been made. No matter what anybody says, no final decisions have been made, and there will be public input. That's all we can commit to. Lee?
I want to back up a little bit. Everything we're talking about is based on the Grass River Waterfront Revitalization Plan, the first one of which was done, I think, completed in 2010, which means we got funding to do it several years before that. The process of developing it happened probably at least 1 to 2 years prior to that. That plan was adopted by the municipality, which means it had a public hearing. It's a lengthy plan. I encourage you to look at it. We have a waterfront advisory committee that was established. I don't recall if it was for that plan or for the Brownfield Opportunity Area work that was happening at the same time, but there was a waterfront advisory committee that exists still that updated the revitalization plan in 2018. It was again, public hearing and adopted by the municipalities. When we go and request funding, everything we are requesting ties back to that plan that was publicly vetted. Enhancement of Willow Island Park, or I don't remember exactly, I don't remember if it says Willow Island Park or waterfront parks, is a stated goal. We applied for money to enhance Willow Island, which includes Canton Island Park. That's what we have money to do. What we are doing now is hiring someone to look at the land tell us what's feasible at that location. Has been interest expressed by the public to have a performance space, to have better parking or reconfigured parking, to have perhaps a natural play space for children to enjoy. There are a number of other concepts that were brought up.
Restrooms, downtown restrooms.
And restrooms, and the discussion there was composting was suggested because we wouldn't have to run utilities there, which could be an issue with the lay of the land there. Again, that's probably something that will be discussed, whether that's feasible or not. In fact, it's referenced in the proposal that we did get. So we are now going through the process to determine how exactly we will enhance that island, which is going to be a completely public process. Everyone will have a chance. No one wants to do anything the community is not going to let. Interested parties will be talked to, stakeholder groups will be included and encouraged and sought out. None of this can happen without public process, and that has happened again and again and again, and it will continue to happen, and nothing will happen. Not everybody is going to like what the final decision is. That's just the nature of things. Not everybody's going to agree 100% on everything. Our intent is to enhance that island to create more enjoyment for the public of the water. And we are in the process now of getting someone to help us with the public's input, create a plan, and then start to implement it. That's what we are at.
Thank
If
you,
I could
Lee.
add-
And
If I could add one thing, I've been on the board for 6 years and attendance at our public hearings is abysmal and embarrassing, honestly.
Minister.
It's
And this
abysmal.
is, it's in the comprehensive plan. And how many years of, work was done on this comprehensive plan?
Also, can I say something about that ruralization plan? It also mentioned the enhancement of Taylor Park. And there's nothing been done on Taylor Park for years.
True, you're right.
So that's
So
what,
why wasn't that?
There
part
was
of your-
That's,
When we did the comprehensive plan, there was a specific piece that looked specifically at Taylor Park to look at that separately. It just hasn't been what has yet been pushed forward. It's known that we need to do things in a lot of places. Sometimes things just rise to the top, and that's where we go, and the boards decide, okay, yes, this is what we're going to pursue funds for this time. We have a lot of advisory committees that give us their feedback, whether it be trails, waterfront, trees, sustainability, recreation, economic development. We get input from all of those areas. The board gets input, the board decides ultimately where we're going to pursue this year. And as I said earlier, what's on the agenda today is one of the priorities that we're looking at pursuing for this grant cycle. We're having discussion and starting discussion now as the funding, the majority of the funding is going to be announced soon. What are our other priorities? Where are we going to pursue funding this year? Let's keep the pipeline going. These now waterfront grants are now 5 years. You have 5 years to term to complete them. They used to be shorter than that. But that's where we're at. If you, as a member of the community, have a particular interest in something, make that known, and it will get the board's attention. We can discuss it and decide if it's.
All right, I'm going to take one more comment and then we need to
One
move
quick
forward.
last question for Mike. What did you mean when you just made the comment that the final decision?
Final decision
That's right.
has not been, made.
Has not,
has not been made.
that's what he said.
On the implementation of the Willow Line.
Yeah.
Or even a plan.
Or even a
Or a
plan.
plan, nothing. Yeah, final, that has not been made.
So we got that in the record. The final, thank you very much.
Yeah,
That's
All right.
what we're shooting.
yeah.
All right, so let's get back to the agenda item, discussion on if we want to resubmit that application. Again, it was, I believe, written that the town would sponsor it. And can you just review the terms again, the amount of money, the local match? I believe it's like 81,000 total. And there's a
and it-
50
We did request this time 85% grant funding and 15% match. So yes, it is to an assessment of all of the town and village recreation.
Has the EB committee and rec committee, reviewed it and offered anything on it as of yet? Because we have new board members and new makeups of committees. I'd say, why not just run it through the committees for another review and then it's a board issue? I'd like to hear from the committees on it again.
I have no problem with tabling it and doing that.
But if we table it, what does that do to the
They
timeline?
haven't even put the applications out yet, right? Yeah, so we're not on
So
a
we do
time,
have
we're not
time.
even on a timeline yet.
Okay, but we can't wait until we meet as a group together again.
Oh, no, I think the committee should be talking about it, bringing it back to our respective boards and we ready to
That's fine.
move forward.
I would respect that.
Yes.
No, I don't think he's waiting next quarter. I mean,
Okay, so
when
what
is
is,
it, Lee? Generally June?
It's usually
When the
the
deadline
deadline.
Applications announced?
Typically the end of, announced typically mid-May.
Yeah.
For the next few weeks. I
Yeah.
don't think we'd see the funding notice, funding availability and resources.
Yep.
And they're typically due very end of July.
okay. So, everybody, we have homework.
We have
Okay,
homework, but I think in general, I was supportive of it last time.
I'm sorry.
In general, I was supportive of it last time around. And I think there are a lot of really good parents.
I think there's public interest too that this is
Absolutely,
done. So
100%.
I mean, it's pretty clear.
I don't know if you want to entertain conversation on it now. I'm happy to talk in my, committee about it, but the fact is that I was on the debrief call for why we didn't get the last one. And I mean, really and truly what Lee said about us being very close is completely accurate. And the points that we missed by were minimal. And if we included an implementation piece this time, that base would be covered. In addition, in our conversation with Department of State, it really seemed clear to me that applying for money to facilitate the designation of our community as an LWRP waterway, whatever, all those acronyms, that also benefits our application. So I think we have a really good shot at a successful application, one that was supported by the community and both boards last time around. So from my perspective, unless something comes up in committee, which I don't really, or in the CFA release itself, I very much hope we choose to do this.
Yeah, and my request is only for new board members to get a chance to go through it again and be part of the process.
Can I, one quick clarification? What are the steps to the FERD to become designated waterway?
Oh, well,
Okay, yes, okay.
We had an hour-long presentation.
they didn't make it easy.
Of course we do.
Yeah, sure, that
Okay.
would be like-
Okay.
Maybe a flow chart.
All right,
Maybe that was a quick answer.
so we have some homework and some reading to do and some discussion. So,
Before we move on, thank you, Lee, for all the work that you've done. Appreciate the
Thanks,
clarification.
Lee.
and I appreciate your coming and giving feedback.
Yes,
Good, I appreciate it. So,
and I think there's now a better understanding of where we are, what the process is.
It always helps to further the conversation when we get asked questions.
Well, yeah, absolutely.
I mean,
Sure.
Sally, did we need to ask that person on the
Thank
site
you for asking.
for, to identify themselves?
I can ask them to, but
All right, well, thank you. Appreciate your being here. All right, the next item is new municipal building funding discussion. You guys ready?
Yeah.
All right, so again, we've been talking about this for quite some time. We got a study done. Is that the study you have right there, Mayor?
Mhm.
Okay, and when was that completed?
2019.
2019, so years ago.
That was a facility study and space needs.
So we're at the point where we really need to start talking about how are we gonna fund it, if this all works out. So I'm opening up to the board. If you want to start the conversation or questions or comments,
Well,
go ahead. Oh, yeah,
What is it?
a new municipal building.
Oh,
I mean, it just strikes me that like, we haven't talked at all about anything about that. Like, we've just been, so jumping to the funding part, I'm like, what is it? What are we planning?
I think that, and I talked to Anna a little bit about it too. We did a space study and a facility study. There's more to the work that needs to be done. As you start to look at developing, a plan, not just a study. So that would probably be the next step. In terms of funding, anytime you do something like that, it's a bonding issue.
Big bucks.
If you're gonna build a facility or remodel a facility, you're gonna bond for it. That's what we've done, as we built the new fire station years ago, as we build other facilities, it's bonded. I think one thing we can do is contact the architectural firm that did the facility study, that they did a lot of work on developing a basic concept. But they could come back and see what it would take to start to develop a bigger plan.
I mean, I'd be interested in paying for that part of it out of pocket to make it happen.
Oh, yeah.
When we go to apply for money,
No,
we
I
already
don't-
have that part done and it shows we have skin in the game.
No, I think you're right about that.
We just pay for it.
Yeah, no, you're right about that. That's not something I don't think we can find. I think the next step is to find out, how intensive the next step is. What
So
the
should that be,
expense
should we put out an RFP though for somebody to help us for design concepts?
We can either do that, or we can go back to the one that we ended up selecting for the study.
We can do this without closure on the jobs.
Well, we're progressing on that. But we can do the research and find out what it's gonna cost us to go the next step. I mean, I think that's where we're at.
If you're gonna do design, I think it's important that. Oh, the design, you know that. That's our piece of property.
Yep. No, absolutely. But we can do the research to get ready. I mean, that's, when this came up on the agenda, that's the way I felt about it. I didn't look at it, at first I looked at it and said, oh, how are we gonna fund this? Well, we're gonna buy the building, that's what we do. But there's
But there's
more to
steps-
do.
there's
before
steps
we-
to get there. Okay.
Yeah, there's steps to get there before you even talk about that.
And we are taking those steps. We're trying to acquire the land.
Yep.
You know,
And we
Those are
did,
steps.
our diligence when it came to the phase 1 and phase 2 to understand what was in that property. And that's what the holdup is on the purchase of the property is, there's contamination. And McDonald's has got to take care of that. So really, that's the, why it's taken so long to get from just signing purchase offer to closing that purchase offer. We certainly don't want that expense on our shoulder.
And we just did sign the 5th extension. So, and there's so much money out there, right? And I agree with you. We're going to have to bond, but there is funding. It just seems like there's so much federal money and state money, and I just want to make sure that we keep moving forward somehow. Because there's a need for it.
Will the ARPA funds be open to this for part of it? Because I know they've really kind of almost made it not free money, but
They've expanded
they've
it.
expanded
Well, I have to,
greatly.
we would have to look to
Yeah.
see,
You know,
we would have to look to see if ARPA funds could be used for some of the preliminary work. I don't know.
Yeah, I'm sure it can. You still buy a Zamboni with it, you can do it. I mean, it's-
Well,
Yeah.
you can't,
You can build a
Zamboni,
zoo.
you can justify by lost revenue.
Well, sorry.
Buying a-
Trademark.
buying a
Ice
limit-
cream silver, sir. My apologies.
It really has opened up a lot of different projects, so.
But the money lost during the COVID, that can be, that's what you're using towards with the ARPA funds. So can it be used for this? All you gotta do is ask the question.
So I'm trying to recall if Lee had, did the RFP way back then. To get- how
No,
did
she
we-
wouldn't have done that.
How did we do that? We'd have to research that.
I'll go back and look, but
On how we got that.
we selected this firm.
We had three to pick from, I believe.
We selected this firm to do the work. So
I think we sent out a direct letter to firms. So is that what the boards would like to do, is for us to take the next step?
I mean, timing is there, I mean, I think the key is next door, like Jim pointed out. We want to start spending money before we know that we have that.
Well, I'm not saying we're gonna spend the money, but we can find out what it's gonna cost. us.
Sure.
That's,
Yeah, I
that
mean,
would be
we
my,
can find out who's available to do it.
that's what would be
Yeah.
my recommendation, to find out what the next step would be and the expense.
That's fair, I'm good with that.
That's all I,
Everybody everybody good with
that
that?
would be my recommendation.
Okay, great. All right. Is there anything else that anyone wants to bring to the board? New business for the boards?
Public comment?
Mary Ann, community choice aggregation. If, as you probably most of you know, the village is going ahead with the education program for that. And if the town is interested at this point or any point down the road, it's wide open. The energy purchase won't be till the fall. So there's time to, think about it. I have several people I can give you some resources of people that can provide more information. A really good presentation that I can forward to you if you're interested in. Check things out and see what you want to do.
That's the jewel.
Yes,
Yeah.
your power.
Yeah, and I also got some information, the sustainability fair, and put it in everybody's mailboxes. So
Yeah.
Louise, I think, is very interested in us learning more about it. Yeah.
I'll forward some links to you and you can check out some of the resources.
Just one more thing to mention, Mark, still on track for Saturday morning?
And Friday, the school will be going in and Saturday.
So everybody knows.
Do you want to say exactly what that is? You said Saturday morning, but what?
Oh, the canoe
Being delivered,
uh,
The launch.
launch.
being delivered and installed.
What time is that at? Okay.
Bring your gloves.
I was gonna say, hat and mittens, let's go.
All right, anything else? All right, so we do need to go into executive session for purposes of acquisition of property and employment of a particular person. I need a motion to go in to executive session. Moved by Bob, second. Second by Jim Smith. Tom, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. And then you want to do yours, going into executive session?
Yeah, we'll need a motion to an executive session for the same.
Second.
All in favor?
Right.
Any opposed? Okay.
Okay, thank you. We're going into
Huh?
executive session. Yeah.
That's fine.